Greenlight Network presents Football Time.
Hey, and welcome to the Football Time Show. It's NFL Week 11. We're on our road to recovery here. It's been an interesting week at the Greenlight Network studio. Sickness has infected us, and overworked and sick is never a good thing for consistent show making. So hopefully next week, of course, during the holiday week, we can get back into a little bit better of a rhythm, but we're playing through it today on Friday, and we'll see if we can get back to normal standard show making next week.
Yeah, well, I mean, in a way, it kind of worked out for me because I was able to avoid the pain of recounting my team's performance. And we also, got it out of the way. So right before Thanksgiving and those Thanksgiving Day games, we can at least give you some content before then.
Yeah, definitely so. We saved the hour and a half long recap show and don't make you relive really a bad 2 weeks here. We'll probably touch on it a little bit as we preview the game, but we probably won't go as in-depth as we would have after a very, very sad-looking Achilles strolled in on that Monday. It was a tough day for the Achilles. Let's get into Week 12, and interesting week. I actually kind of like these. I'm probably going to continue to ride my theme of underdogs this week as it's really been hitting. Once again, home teams, they did end up having a winning record last week, but they only gained about a game overall on that record, where actually road teams have a better record overall than home teams. So another thing to sort of keep looking at is the sort of home does not quite mean as much. I think we sort of saw that the other day in Thursday's game. A 7-point road favorite went in there and pretty much destroyed, the Atlanta Falcons. Hopefully we are done with their season, but I feel like we're going to get another 30-point outpouring score and a random win from Atlanta, and we'll have to continue to talk about them. But at least for now, they look dead in the water.
Yeah, I know for sure you're definitely going to have to drop a bet on them at some point in the upcoming weeks because you just can't get enough of Atlanta.
Yeah, I think you were the one who was deeply in love with Atlanta. I made a first touchdown bet, and that was it in that game. I think you went all in and were writing some other Green Lake Network team members' picks and wrote it right into the house of Shutoutville.
Well, listen, as you mentioned, we've both been kind of dealing with I'm just going to say a cold. It's not that serious, but we've both been feeling a little ill and a little overworked. And I went against my better judgment and listened to someone else. And I think last season they did the same thing. I wasn't feeling good, listened to someone else, and it cost me. So I should say lesson learned, but I'll probably end up doing it again.
Yeah. All right, let's dive into the rest of the games this week. Let's start out with a pretty good one here. The Indianapolis Colts go to the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo Bills 7-point favorites here. Total sits at 49.5. First half is 4.5 with a total of 24.5. Replay of the wild card game last year where Indianapolis played really, really well, but sort of found a way to lose that game. This one's pretty interesting. The 7-point spread, I read something funny about Buffalo. They have won all their games by 15 or more points, and then they've lost the other ones. So either they basically are going to destroy you or they're going to lose. It's not much of a in-between so far this year, but this one has sort of a counterbalance because, Indianapolis really runs the ball well. Buffalo's defense has not allowed teams to run the ball very well on them at all. Indianapolis is probably one of the top rush defenses in the league. Buffalo does not even bother to really run the ball. The Colts secondary has been a real weakness for them. But, if you can't run the ball, how much of an effect can you really enforce on these Colts, because they won't be able to run the ball at all, the Buffalo Bills. So I'm curious of this 7. Would you ride this Buffalo Bills team, or are you going to play the Colts here, or you just sort of, this one's a hard call. I'm going to sort of wipe my hands clean of this game here.
I think if we would have been talking about this particular matchup a few weeks back, I think we've easily would have probably leaned towards the Bills side of the ball. But we've seen them struggle, a few times over the last few weeks, starting with that Tennessee game and then even in Jacksonville. So definitely a little bit of concern when you look at you have to get more than a touchdown, obviously, with the 7-point spread. It gives me a little bit of pause. But as you mentioned, even though this Colts team has been playing really good football lately and their rush defense has been really stout, we don't really think of them defensively as good as they were last season. And I'm not sure, exactly why that is, but we haven't really been talking about them defensively as much. Offensively, they do pose a threat with their running attack. But as you mentioned, the Bills' rush defense is also pretty good. So I think this is going to be kind of, a toss-up. I don't know exactly which way I'm leaning. As you mentioned, the Bills have been feast or famine, basically. Either they cover the spread by a lot or they don't cover and you lose some money. I think at 7 points, it's probably a little too high for me. If it was sitting at 6.5, then I'd probably lean more towards the Bills side of the ball. But as it sits right now, I'm probably just going to stay away from this one.
Yeah, you mentioned it, sitting right on that key number of 7. I don't think I'd go on the Bills here. You go a little bit under that, I think I'd be a little bit more aggressive on the Bills, especially the Colts, a dome team going into Buffalo. We have to at least start factoring in some weather here for some of these games, especially for teams like Indianapolis who are used to playing in a dome. It's a hard call for me here because Indianapolis really is sort of good at every phase of the game, but you wouldn't say they are great really at any true phase of the game. You might say they have a great running back, but I don't even know if I'd go there because, you sort of watched it versus, a team like the Titans, and they sort of seem to pull away from the running back, which is, I think, why they lost that game. But, I don't know if I trust the Bills here either. They've played a pretty weak schedule up to this point so far. Just a couple games there where the offense has totally just been non-existent. Is that what we're going to get here in this game? They struggled with this team we mentioned in the first round of the playoffs last year. Both these teams are relatively similar. You switch out Wentz for Rivers. That's, sort of a wash in my hands. You bring back the same running back crews. You bring back the same defense. So I don't know if I'd take the 7, but I don't know if I'd trust the Colts here enough from what I've seen, because they also seem to have been able to feast and win games versus, lower tier teams. But every time they've seemed to try to step up here, they have not looked good or they've blown that game. So I'm sort of a pass on this one. But I do think it'll be a very entertaining game. Also, now with New England winning another game, Buffalo Bills got to start sort of playing to win games here, because that division is not just theirs. They got 2 games to play with the Patriots, so they can't really drop off too much here. I think the Colts, division chances are pretty much washed at this point, so they're just playing for the playoffs. So I think the pressure is a little bit here more on the Bills in this game as well.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I think that, as you mentioned, the Patriots have been playing really good football. Granted, it's not against some of the best teams, but even when they have faced good teams, they seem to step up to the competition. So I think that the Bills definitely have a little more urgency when it comes to this particular matchup and getting the win. And a lot of that has to do with just the way the division is playing out.
Yeah, definitely so. All right, so you want to put this, since it's our first game on the day, we could probably cross this one off with a little bit of confidence here, as we have a bunch more to get to find our sort of 5 mutual picks here. We'll move on to the next one and see if we can find something a little bit more juicier to dive into here. We'll go Baltimore Ravens, Chicago Bears. I don't know if this is the juicy one we really want to dive into, but Bears coming off a bye. That has not meant as much either so far this season. I think you saw it again with the Bucs, who came off a bye, looked a little rusty, did not look all that great. I will say a couple of the Bears defenders coming back healthy now off that bye, which probably helps them. Baltimore gets a little mini bye after playing that Thursday game last week and losing to Miami. I just don't know what to make of this game. Baltimore's defense is really, really sitting in unexpected territory in the lower 20s so far in DVOA. The Bears defense also sits pretty low in those 20s. Now they haven't had Mack and a couple other guys for a lot of games, but both these teams who have been solely built on defense have not really stepped up. The Ravens offense has been improved, but I don't know how much of that is really improved and how much of that is you have Lamar Jackson, which is essentially one of the best running backs in the league, and also he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So you're killing two birds with one player there in having a top-tier running back and a top-tier quarterback all playing one position there. So I don't know if I love the Ravens sitting at 5.5 here, but, you really have to twist my arm to think these Bears are capable of beating the Ravens. I'm curious your thought. You think the Bears can come out here off the bye and play well and cover this spread? They've been a much better home team this year than a road team so far.
I mean, as you've mentioned, this bye week really hasn't impacted teams in a positive way. I'm sure it has. Off the top of my head, I can't quite remember, but just from recent memory, it doesn't seem to really bode well for teams to be coming off of a bye. It's not like it's making a huge difference. Practice probably has something to do with that new contract they negotiated. But when I look at this matchup, I look at the Ravens team, and I know that, defensively, they're, as you mentioned, they're kind of falling off, where they're at the pace that they were currently at. And I still think they can play good enough defense against what I believe to be a pretty bad offensive, Bears team. And I think they can step their game up and play well. And if they do that, I see no reason why this offense can't just completely burn this Chicago defense, which they've been dealing with injuries pretty much, over the last, 4 or 5 weeks. They had injuries at their linebacker. They had injury at their defensive tackle. So guys kind of been going in and out of their lineup, which has really messed up with the flow of things defensively. So I do like the Ravens in this one. I mean, I'm not bullish on it, but I do like the Ravens. I think that defensively they can do enough, as I mentioned, to stop that Bears offense. And offensively, one thing you forgot to mention about their quarterback, he's not just, a great running back and a great quarterback. He's also a great playmaker, and he can make things happen when it looks like things are going to look really bad. So I like the Ravens in this one. I feel confident that they're going to cover this spread. I just don't feel bullish enough to actually take it myself, but I don't blame anybody that would take it.
Yeah, the thing about this is I think we're getting taxed here about 2 extra points here because, people think the Bears are no good, which the Bears are no good. But I'm not 100% sold right now that the Ravens are all that good. Now, there is a higher upside for the Ravens because you mentioned Lamar Jackson is there and he can carry you to big wins. But, I mean, you just go over Baltimore, and they've had games where they, really struggled this season. That Dolphins game you go back to, they were down in that Minnesota game. They had to make, a miracle comeback. They had to get a last-second 66-yard field goal when they were at Detroit to win that game. They've just had some, weird outliers in here where they've struggled. Now, they've had some games where they've really dominated. They beat the Chiefs, at home. They didn't dominate that game, but, they won that game. They beat Indianapolis 31-25, which is a pretty good win. I think everybody's looking at that Chargers game, a handful of weeks ago, 34-6, and making that their big win. And now you sort of look back on that, and we aren't as big on the Chargers as we were, 3 or 4 weeks ago that win doesn't look quite as good. So I think we're getting overly taxed on that point spread. I think it should be, probably 3.5, maybe 4. And we're having to eat 5.5 here on this one on the road in Chicago, which I don't love. But I would find it very hard to believe that Baltimore would lose back-to-back games to the Dolphins, Bears here. That just doesn't seem out of the realm of possibility. And, honestly, we talked about the bye thing, but I think that mini bye probably ends up helping you more than the full bye because you just get that extra couple days off and then you get back into your routine. Whereas that bye, you have that full week off. They can't really practice during that week. So it's basically a full week to, go live the life of a king for a week, and then you come back and try to get refocused on the season. Whereas that mini bye, you get a couple days, and then you're back refocused, on the season. So I think the mini bye seems to help more than the actual bye so far this year. I just wouldn't be real bullish on the 5.5 there on that number. It just seems a little bit bloated to me.
Yeah, I have to agree with you, but I do want to say we were on a mini bye, one of those, couple extra days here. But I really could have used the full bye, as you mentioned, live like a king. I could have used one of those.
Yeah, well, that's coming in about 3 months here. You could take your full buys, and you got a nice couple months before we try to make you talk some draft stuff. May you bring it back in, talk some NBA stuff as well, just break up the monotony.
Yeah, I say that now, and as soon as we get towards the end of the season, I'm going to start crying.
Yeah, I know. We're getting closer and closer, but it does seem like that added game seems to make this season have felt longer than it usually does. And it's 1 week, and we aren't even to that week yet. But it does just seem like this season is a little bit longer than it usually feels like, because the college season is wrapping up in the next, 2 weeks or so, and we're barely over the halfway point here in the NFL season, which I think people ought to remember too. There could still be a lot of sort of flips and turns here for a lot of teams. We already have fallen in love with Cincinnati and fallen out of love with Cincinnati so far this season. So could be a handful more flips and turns here. Maybe Baltimore is one of those we all turn on here if they lose this game and all of a sudden they have losses to, back-to-back weeks to Miami and Chicago. All right, let's move on to a different one here. Detroit at Cleveland. Interesting game here. Cleveland, 11.5-point favorites. I don't know. I'd have to really delve into the history books, but I don't know who comes at 11.5-point favorites after you lose a game 42-7, 45-7. A lot of 40s to 7 the week before. And then you come back and be 11.5-point favorites when your quarterback is probably not or might not play in this one. Nick Chubb is still a question mark in this one. Jared Goff is a question mark in this one, but I think he's going to end up playing. But 11.5 points here. What do you make of this game? Lions coming off I don't know quite what that game was. It wasn't fun to watch. I can say that versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. That overtime was pretty much embarrassing for anybody who watches professional football. But I guess they have a tie. I don't know if that counts as a win, but Cleveland 11.5-point favorites here.
Yeah, I'm not touching this game with the 10-foot pole. As you mentioned, Cleveland has been dealing with a bunch of injuries. They've had guys in and out of the lineup. They've had guys playing that are banged up and hurting. Now, granted, everybody's pretty much banged up at this point in the season, but these are, key guys in that lineup. So, and then you got Detroit, who on 1 week, looks like Detroit, the team that hasn't won a single game. And then you have Detroit that looks like they might win their first game. This spread's way too big, too many injuries to be concerned with, and bad football in general that I just don't want to be a part of it. I don't want to have any action on this and be forced to watch it. So I'm staying away from it. To me, it just reeks of an upset for either way, whichever side you bet.
Yeah. The only way I'd say you could go is probably just take the points here and hope but I don't know if I want a lot of shares of Detroit Lions football. That being said, I don't think there's a whole lot of difference between Baker Mayfield and Case Keenum. So I don't put a lot of, juice there on which one of those two guys starts. I probably put a little more juice on if Jared Goff is, starting or the Lions backup coming in there because that
Who even is the backup in Detroit?
Oh, God, who was the backup in Detroit? I looked it up and now I've forgotten. It was not a pretty sight. It was, of course, a nobody. But I think the only play you go here is probably Detroit. Maybe if Chubb comes back, you might start to think about it a little bit. David Blau is the backup in the. He is not what you'd call an upgrade over Jared Goff here. So, if Goff it does not play, which now they list him as doubtful, so we're probably getting a little bit of a peek into the David Blau era. He got a couple starts last year. He was not great. I do think he did win a game, but it's not really where you want to be. So I think I'd go pass on this one, but if you were making me take one, probably lean a little bit towards taking the points in the Lions here. But I think this is just a cross-off game that no one, gambling-wise, should be involved in.
Yeah, no, I think I'd consider maybe taking the points if I knew Jared Goff was healthy and playing. But with that doubtful tag, it's just I don't like it. Like I said, to me, it reeks of turning either way on you. So I'm just going to stay away.
Yeah. Next up, Houston Texans, Tennessee Titans. Titans 9.5-point favorites. Total sits at 44 here. First half at 6. Second half at 22.5. This one's, I think a blowout waiting to happen. But I kind of like the number at 9.5 here for Tennessee, or for Houston, getting points in this one. Tennessee continues to find ways to win games without really being the favored to win games. Once again, their win total sits at wins expected on PFF sits at 5 wins. They're now at 8 wins on the season, which just is one of those weird things. They got another sort of found a way to win last week versus the Saints, though the Saints covered that game. I read a funny stat. The Titans have been in 5 3-point games this year. They've won 4 of them. So you flip those games around, they're a 5-5 team, which, it sort of sits. They've been good in close games. I guess there's a spot for that. But once again, I look at these numbers over and over, and I sort of see some sort of regression and evening up of what has been sort of a lopsided way of them getting nice bounces and winning close games. And I look for that to sort of even balance out at some point. I don't know if the Texans are going to be able to do that, but I will say the history of this game, no matter how good either team is, it has always pretty much been a close game between Tennessee and Houston. So I kind of like the 9.5 here. I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, me personally, I'm going to stay away from it, and it's simply because of the fact that they're divisional opponents. If this was, some Tennessee Titans from, let's just say, the NFC South as opposed to the AFC, and they were going up against the same Texans team, then I'd probably feel more comfortable taking the points for the Titans at that point, just because Houston's been playing really poorly. But the fact that these two teams know each other, and as you mentioned, they have a history, and that history tends to lean more towards a closer game, I can see why you'd be tempted to take the Texans. I just can't bring myself to take them, even with that many points. I feel like Tennessee has been playing really good. I'll be the nice guy on this particular segment, this game, this matchup, and say that Tennessee's been playing really good football. I know that they've definitely had some bounces go their way, some calls go their way, but that's just the way it goes. This is the NFL, and that's how it happens sometimes. But they've taken advantage of it, and they've played better defense than they were playing at the beginning of the year. offensively, they're making up for the injuries that they have on offense, both with wide receivers in and out of the lineup this season. And obviously Derrick Henry's out. So they've been making do and they've been pulling off wins. So that's all you can really ask for if you're a Tennessee Titan fan. So I'll give them credit with that. But as far as taking them in this game, divisional opponent, I don't feel comfortable, and I don't feel comfortable taking the Texans. So I'm staying away from this one.
Yeah, the other thing that makes me lean Texans on this big spread is if you've looked at the Titans' offense the last 3 weeks without Derrick Henry, yeah, they've won games, but it's not been good offense. It's been really, really poor. I think that continues here. Now, I don't know if the Texans can win this game, but I do think they cover that spread. But you don't seem to be big on this one. Probably because you've watched the Houston Texans play football so far this season, and probably the last memory in your head is Tyrod Taylor versus the Dolphins throwing an interception every third pass. That being said, the Texans are coming off a bye. We've hammered the bye, but maybe it sort of helped him get him a little bit healthier than he probably was, the week before. So I kind of like the 9.5, but we'll go to the next one. This one's a fun one. Green Bay, Minnesota. Green Bay, anyone who's been betting on Green Bay so far this year has really rolled in the money. The only game they didn't cover was that first game of the season. Since then, they've been pretty much dominating. 1.5-point favorites at the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota Vikings coming off a really pretty decent win over the Los Angeles Chargers. They come back home here. First, the Packers. It's only 1.5 to the Packers here. But, the Vikings are one of those weird teams. They are like the complete opposite of Tennessee, where every one of their numbers and stats says this team is really good. And then every one of their actual win-loss stats shows they are not good. So, Vikings at home plus 1.5. Where are you going here, Packers-Vikings?
Now, this is actually one of the matchups that I actually have in my personal picks. And I'm just going to go ahead and spoil it right now. I like Green Bay in this one. I know that their running back was doubtful as of this morning, and I believe he's probably out. I don't think he's going to play in this game. With all that being said, I think that Aaron Rodgers still has the ability to do enough, and they might actually open things up more for the wide receivers. He tends to kind of let loose when his running backs aren't at 100%. And with the backup playing in this particular matchup, which is what I expect is going to happen, I feel like he's really going to let loose. So defensively, the Packers have been quietly doing just enough to keep their opponents at bay. As you mentioned, they've been covering just about anything. In this one, a 1.5-point spread, it's pretty much a pick 'em in my opinion. So I like the Packers. I think the Packers are gonna pull it off in this. I think they can cover.
Yeah, I think the Packers continue to cover. You mentioned Aaron Jones will be out. On the running side of those things, I don't think that's much of a drop-off. I think A.J. Dillon, while he's a different type of back, can really get a lot of those power yards up the middle. He's a really good, running back. Now, you lose a lot from Aaron Jones to A.J. Dillon on those little short, screen passes, swing passes, stuff like that. That's not sort of A.J. Dillon's game. But they got, a couple different guys who could do that. They could, start using Randall Cobb in sort of a, swing pass hybrid, role to catch screen passes, stuff like that. So I think they can make up for that sort of loss, and I don't think they drop too much, off the running game on that. The thing that would lead me to take the Packers in this one is the Vikings defense has been pretty beat up here. There are a lot of question marks on who's playing on the Vikings side of the defense here. Pierce is going to be out. Harrison Smith is a question mark. A couple other guys are question marks with COVID and stuff like that. So I think the Vikings defense will not be quite up to standard to be able to hold this Packers team. You mentioned the Packers defense. The last 4 weeks, they've been top 3 rated defensively by DVOA. So they've really, after a sort of slow start to the season, they've picked it up and really found a decent form. Now, they did lose Whitney Merciless, who they traded for the Texans to get to win on IR, but he wasn't playing a whole lot of snaps there, so I don't think that'll affect him too much. Bakhtiari should be back probably this week. They aren't fully saying, but to get, one of the best left tackles back in the game can only help the Green Bay Packers here. Rodgers looked a little bit rusty in that Seahawks game, but I think that was more the Seahawks defense is starting to come around a little bit. They're starting to play better, and he seemed to find his form there late in that game. So I really sort of like the Packers -1.5 here. We saw the Vikings get a win last week. It probably means the Vikings are due to do something stupid and melt down in a game here. So I think the Green Bay probably our first decent mutual pick here. Let's put Green Bay down.
Okay, I will add really quick that for those of you that are actually concerned about the running back situation for Green Bay, if you just look at the raw stats of both of these teams, the Vikings' strength would be technically their offense. They have really good rushing attack and they have really good passing attack also. So you would assume that if it's going to be a shootout, there's not going to be much of a need for running backs on Green Bay side of the ball. So something to ease you a little bit, make you feel a little more comfortable taking Green Bay at -1.5.
Yeah. Also, the Minnesota offensive coordinator the week ago was wondering why they weren't getting Jordan Jefferson the ball more. I don't know if the offensive coordinator knows, but that's his job. He's the one who calls the plays. So maybe check into that. He's Gary Kubiak's son, so maybe not that shocking that a little nepotism led to some OC not knowing what the hell he's doing. Stunning in the coaching ranks that some rando just gets a job because his father was a halfway decent backup quarterback and coach.
He was under the impression that all he really had to do was draw up the plays and someone else would call him.
Maybe so. It is Minnesota. There's no telling what goes on there. All right, let's move on to an interesting one. Speaking of coaches who might be a little bit out of their depth, Robert Sala and the New York Jets are 3.5-point dogs here. 45 on the over-under, 2.5 on the first half, 21.5 on the line here. I'm really big on the Dolphins here. One, for some reason, Robert Sala has decided that Joe Flacco should be starting at quarterback. Not Mike White, who threw for 400 yards 2 weeks ago. Not Zach Wilson, their first-round pick and guy they're trying to build their future around. But Joe Flacco, old, has not been good since, I don't know, possibly we were just getting out of high school. I know he has not been good since we started working at our jobs. Why wouldn't we just take the Dolphins 3.5 here and roll with this as the Dolphins defense has started to play well? And can you explain to me why the hell Joe Flacco is starting a football game in 2021?
Listen, I have
NFL
absolutely
football game. If somebody wants to use him as their flag football quarterback in a rec league, I'm okay with that.
I honestly, it shocks me to even see these headlines because I don't understand it. You're not playing for anything at this point. You're so far behind the standings that realistically speaking, you're pretty much out of the playoffs at this point. So why not work on developing your guys? I mean, I understand you probably want to keep guys healthy and things like that, but listen, you can't replace experience like on the field experience. There's nothing to replace it. You can study all the film you want. You can, read the playbook all you want, learn the playbook up and down. But unless you actually get out on the field and actually see these things happening in front of you, you're never really going to be able to relate both of them. So I don't understand the concept of, keeping your young guys on the bench, warming the bench for this guy who we already know what we're getting from Joe Flacco. And not to be mean, I know he's a Super Bowl champ, but even when he won a Super Bowl, it wasn't because of him. It was because of that defense. That defense won that Super Bowl. So I don't understand it, but this is the Jets. The coach for the Jets right now is going through a bunch of drama with Rex Ryan. And I don't know. I don't want to get involved with it. I'm staying away from this. But I didn't want you to kind of try and talk me into it. I know when the Dolphins are involved, I can always count on you trying to sell me. And the Jets are really that bad that I guess I don't really need much selling. I'm with you. Let's roll with the Dolphins.
Yeah, a couple things on the Dolphins here. Their last 3 games, defensively, they've been back to their form. Now, one of those was versus the aforementioned Texans, but, Texans, Jets, I think we're in the same wavelength here. And the other is that Baltimore game. Now, that's a little bit more impressive when your defense is going in there and shutting down Baltimore and making Lamar Jackson look normal. So I think this defense has sort of found its form for Miami. Tua, probably going to play this game, has looked better and better when he's been able to be on there. Jalen Waddle has started to improve. I don't know if this offense has hit full stride, but it's starting to have a little bit more flow. I think the defense coming there has been good. And the Jets, I think I'd be a little bit scared if it was a Mike White or a Zach Wilson because you don't know what you're going to get. But I know what I'm getting from Joe Flacco. Sacked a lot and a lot of checkdowns, which basically just plays right into the Dolphins' hands. So I just, 3.5 on the road, probably a little ugly. But I think the Dolphins are going to go on a little bit of a run here as they have that dip in their schedule. So I think you got to take advantage of this while you can. I would suggest the 2.5 because the Jets have been so bad in the first half. But 2.5, 3.5, not enough of a split. The odds makers seem to have caught up on the Jets in the first half, as I think they've only covered twice this season in the first half line. So the drop off 2.5 to 3.5, I'd rather just have that 3.5. And I don't foresee really a backdoor cover coming here from the Jets, which would be the only thing to worry about. I think the Dolphins go in there, shut the Jets down, and cover this pretty easy here.
So I guess Dolphins is our next pick.
Yeah, definitely so. Let's go Dolphins. So Dolphins and Green Bay so far. Let's go into the next game, and this is one of these little fun ones that probably the stat nerds love. New Orleans coming off a tough loss to Tennessee. Probably a game they should have won, but for some reason they have a kicker who doesn't know how to kick. How that occurs in the NFL, I don't quite know. But they play the Philadelphia Eagles coming off a really nice win to Denver. Since they finally decided to switch their style of football and start running the ball more, for some reason it seemed to occur when Miles Sanders went out. You'll have to explain that one to me, why they didn't do it earlier in the season with the best running back on the team. They're doing it now. Their offensive numbers have improved just extraordinarily, and they are really, really playing good offensive football right now. Defense, always sort of hot and cold. But with this rushing attack, they've been really good on offense. But you have the counter. The Saints have the best rush defense in the NFL. You saw that again versus the Titans. That defense kept them in the game. The question here is what you're getting from the Saints offense. Number sits at -2 for the Philadelphia Eagles. 43.5 is the total. 21 here, first half total. Over under, and then the line sits at a 0.5 point for the Eagles in the first half. Saints 2 here. I think the Saints get a win here. I like the 2 because I like this matchup of the Philadelphia Eagles trying to run the ball versus really the best run defense in the NFL and the Saints. The only counter would be that you don't think the Saints can generate the offense here to do this like they pretty much the last 2 weeks where they haven't been able to get enough points to cover their defense here.
Yeah, I can see where you'd be concerned with that. But to me, when I look at this matchup, and now mind you, Philadelphia has definitely been playing a lot better. If Philadelphia was a roller coaster, they'd be at that beginning right there where they're starting to go up and you can feel the anticipation. Fans are starting to get excited, But I think that they're right there, right, getting ready to hit that down slump. I took them last week against Denver, and this is more of a gut feeling because they had been playing better. They looked better. Their running attack looked a lot better also. But I feel like it's gotten to the point now where they've caught onto it enough to where a defensive coordinator can actually plan or scheme against the type of attack that Philadelphia's going to bring you. To me, their passing attack is just lacking the weapons that they need to really counterattack when someone goes to defending the run as heavy as I think it's going to happen this week. So, yeah, I like New Orleans in this one. I think that they're going to be able to cover this one, maybe not just cover, but I think they're going to be able to pull off a win. Not to spoil it here, but this is actually one of the other teams that's on my list. I don't have a lot of picks this week, but I tried to make sure that the ones that I did take were ones that I was going to like, and I like New Orleans in this one.
Yeah. Also, to sort of, paint a picture here, which you all each should probably do, that rushing attack that has been so explosive. The last 3 games have come against the Lions, the Chargers, and the Broncos. So, that's a much, much different sort of set of teams than going up against this Saints team here. None of those are really what we'd call leading resistant defenses. Certainly not the Chargers, Lions, and the Broncos have been really, really sort of hot and cold. So I really like the Saints getting points here. I always like the Saints when they're getting points here. The only question is, quarterback play, receiver play. There has not been word on, Kamara yet. But, it would be a big boost if he played. I would say that. But I just think defensively, the Eagles are going to try to run. They're going to run into a brick wall. The Saints will find enough points here to sort of find their way and win this game. So I like the +2 on the Saints as well.
Yeah, and I mean, when the spread's this close, I mean, I know that there can always be a situation where a team doesn't cover, but to me, when it's this close, it's pretty much a pick 'em, and I like the Saints a little bit better.
Yeah, definitely so. All right, we'll move on to our next one. Washington football team, Carolina Panthers. Carolina Panthers at -3 here. 2.5 for the first half, 20.5 for the first half, over under 43.5 for the game. They said before we came on here that Cam Newton was going to be the starter, not PJ Walker. I was a little disappointed in that, but, I guess I understand it. I thought PJ played pretty well in that Cardinals game. Yes, you brought Cam into one-yard touchdown runs, but I'm not sure that's the only thing he's capable to do at this point. But Christian McCaffrey back. He should be able to dump passes there. Chase Young being out for the season now for Washington, whose defense hasn't been that good anyway. I don't know if the 3, it seems a little bit bloated, but this Carolina defense, I think, will shut this Washington team down, and they probably will find a way to win it, but the 3 number concerns me a little bit. I'm curious your take on this one.
Yeah, when I looked at it, also that three kind of bothered me a little bit. I was hoping for maybe a 2.5, but at 3 you basically have to win by a couple field goals or a touchdown. Defensively, I think that the Panthers can do enough to bother Washington. Defensively, as you mentioned, Washington isn't really showing much, and the fact that they lost basically their best player on defense only makes things that much worse. Now, as far as the quarterback situation in Carolina is concerned,
Sweat is out as well, I should mention. So Montez Sweat and Chase Young both out. So probably their top 2 players on defense are out on a defense that already wasn't very good.
Yeah, so I mean, listen, sometimes certain teams will rally when their star defensive anchor goes out, but I don't foresee this being the situation where the Washington football defense kind of gets together and stops every team against all odds. I don't foresee that happening. And with the quarterback situation in Carolina, I do think that we're still going to get a little bit of a PJ in there. I think that it's going to be mixed in. I know Cam's getting the start, and I think it's mostly because of the way that he can rile the troops. You saw last week, he came in there and he was basically a spark plug. He lit up that offense and they kind of got going. He was basically responsible for being, 2 of those touchdowns that team scored. So I understand why they're going in that direction, but I still think we're going to get a little bit of PJ in there every now and then. They're going to mix it up a little bit to kind of throw that defense off. But I like Carolina in this one, even at that 3, which kind of bothers me a little bit. But I still feel comfortable enough to take Carolina in this one.
Yeah, I like Carolina in this one. I guess we could put it down. That would be our 4th. We could put it in the maybe column, see if we like any of these other ones coming up. Since we were both a little bit nervous on that 3, I would say you probably should take the 3 now, because my guess is by Sunday this probably gets a lot of juice going on the Carolina side of things, and it probably ends up at 4.5 by game time. So this would be one I'd tell people to jump on early, because my guess is not a lot of people are going to talk themselves into Washington here, even after their big win versus Tampa Bay.
Let me ask you a question real quick before we move on from this game. What was that halftime spread? 2.5?
It was 2.5. So, half a point above the spread. Yeah, I mean, that would be something you could think about. They come out charged. The only thing I'd worry about is, Carolina's such a sort of conservative offensive team that I'd be a little scared this game would be really tight going into halftime, and eventually Carolina would wear down, Washington. But maybe Cam has enough spark in there where they get off to a big start, and then they sort of hold them off. So, yeah, the 2.5 could be a number I'd look at as well.
Just making sure.
All right, let's go to a team you're familiar with here. The San Francisco 49ers go to the Jacksonville Jaguars. San Francisco, after being 3.5-point home dogs, are now 7-point home favorite or road favorites in Jacksonville. I like Jacksonville in this one. I think going across the country, playing an early game as a 7-point road favorite, I don't like that. I think the trend will show you that West Coast teams going East Coast playing noon as, high favorites don't tend to cover those. Yes, San Francisco played a good game last week, but you and I talked about it on our Sunday show that that was San Francisco's season sitting right there in that St. Louis game. If they had lost that game,
Los Angeles,
yes, they would have been out. So they had everything to play for. The Rams pretty much handed that game to them on the platter in the first, 3 possessions of the game. They were able to get up and play their style of football. I'm just curious if they bring that over and are able to win by 7+ points here versus a Jaguars team which, has defense has played better week to week. They've been able to run the ball. They've been a solid team at stopping the run. So I think things play in their favor here on getting the points here at home, 6.5. I'm curious your thoughts on this one.
See, San Francisco, as far as they're concerned, I think that they're really not as good as we thought they were going to be. And I know they just tromped on my team. I completely understand it. But they have the type of build, they have the type of team philosophy to match up really well against a team like the Rams. Tennessee's another one of those teams that are basically going to try and play turnover happy defense. They're going to try and give up certain things to try and make the quarterback feel comfortable, and then try to get him to make a mistake. And then they tend to be a little more run heavy, which we saw the Rams have had issues basically all season long. Is they've had issues with the run attack. So I do think San Francisco is a pretty good team, not as good as we thought they were going to be, but on the road, in Jacksonville, it feels like a trap game, especially after that big win against the Rams. I feel like we could definitely be in for a letdown, but either way, I can't foresee myself taking a Jaguars team. So if you're really confident about it, I'll roll with you on it. But I got to be honest with you, I'm not super confident in it.
Well, I think we probably are better taking Carolina. I probably will throw Jacksonville in my picks at the end of the show. So let's move on to one I don't think anyone should really gamble on. The Cincinnati Bengals versus the Las Vegas Raiders. I really tried to look hard and figure out a way to give you some sort of stats and talking points on what way to lean in this one. I have no earthly idea. So what are your thoughts on this game, and which way would you lean?
Listen, if I had to lean any one way, I know that Cincinnati, we've all pretty much fallen out of love with this team. After we talked them up week after week after week based off how they were performing, the sports media comes out and starts basically crowning these guys the next big thing, and then they completely fall flat on their faces. So the love has definitely died down for them, but I think this is the game where they get back on track. The Raiders they've been dealing with a lot of issues both on and off the field within the organization. There seems to be a lot of chaos going on in that team, and they did play better for that 1 week after the whole John Gruden situation, but it seems like after that they've really taken a step back. And even when you expect them to kind of play a little bit better because defensively they're not going up against a defensive juggernaut, so to speak, and they just seem to fall short. So because of all those reasons, I feel like Cincinnati's due to really make a splash, make a comeback in this one. So at -1, or what is it? They're getting 1 point? No, -1 point.
-1.
It's basically a pick 'em. So just going off of talent alone and the way they've performed so far this season, I feel a little more confident taking the Bengals even on the road.
Yeah, I just couldn't quite grab the Bengals because their defense has been so poor the last couple weeks. Now they are coming off a bye. Maybe that's what they needed, a little break, reset, and they get back to where they were. But the defense had really been poor those last two games. The offensive line had started really breaking down to where Burrow was getting hit a lot. The Raiders' defensive line is actually a strength, and they've been able to get a lot of four-man pressure there. And really, if you watch that Chiefs-Raiders game, yes, it looked like a blowout, but, we'll talk about this when we preview the Chiefs-Cowboys game coming up next. Before Deshaun Jackson decided to do some sort of weird maneuver and fumble the ball on the 15-yard line, the Raiders were going in to score to make that game 24-20, and we had a football game, going into the fourth quarter. He fumbles, Chiefs go down, score. We have the reverse. We have a blowout in the making. So, and then after that, the Raiders seem to sort of lose life. I wonder if they can sort of get back life in this game, find their way to get a win. I would just stay away from the game overall because I don't know what I'm getting Bengals-wise. I want to see them get back on track before I jump back on their bandwagon. And I probably just want to see the Raiders find some consistency again after what they've been through the last, couple weeks where they've really sort of lost it both off the field and on the field. So I want to see, I just want to wait and see, and I don't want really anything to do with this game.
I understand.
All right. Speaking of the aforementioned Kansas City Chiefs, the big one this week, Dallas goes to Kansas City. You might think Kansas City would be getting points, but no, Kansas City is never getting points in the Patrick Mahomes era. 2.5-point favorites. Closer and closer, but not quite. 2.5-point favorites this week. 55.5 is the over-under. 1.5. First half line, 27.5. First half over-under. Both teams seem to refine their rhythm this week. Chiefs back to scoring 40 points, 5 touchdowns for Mahomes. I don't know how much of that is they're back and how much of that we mentioned, the Deshaun Jackson fumble doesn't happen. Are we in a close game with nervous time? And do we get that blowout? Dallas looked great versus Atlanta, but we just watched Atlanta play last night. And I'm not sure I couldn't go around a college campus and put together a team that wouldn't look good versus Atlanta at this point. So what do you make of this game? Dallas going into Kansas City. it's going to be a little nippy out there. So I would look at that situation. But what do you make of this game?
I think that if we were looking at this game at the beginning of the year, I would have said, are you a fan of offense? Because if so, then this is a matchup for you. But we've seen that defensively, Dallas has really stepped their game up this season, just compared to last season. Not that they're a shutdown defense by any means, but they're definitely, very turnover happy, and they've been playing a lot better than we expected. So I'll give them credit there. Offensively, we already know what we're going to get from Dallas. They're basically going to throw all over the field. And even though they've been splitting time with the running backs, they both had success at different moments. So I know what I'm getting from that Dallas team. This Kansas City team, though, has been a bit of a letdown so far this season. I know they're back to winning games after last week, and they're back to big offense. But prior to that, we saw them struggle a lot offensively. You saw Patrick Mahomes throw basically interception just about every single game. They have no rushing attack, to speak of. And defensively, they're probably one of the worst defenses in the league. So, yes, you might get some offense, but with the way Dallas has been playing on defense, you also have the possibility of being very one-sided offense. So I think I'm personally going to stay away from this game. I'm going to just sit back and hopefully we get a good, enjoyable, entertaining game. And if that's the case, then I think we all win. But as far as taking anything in this one, I'm probably just going to stay away from it. I feel like it could go either way.
Yeah, a little bit of my gut tells me to grab Kansas City and the 2.5 at home, probably because we haven't seen a line like that probably since Alex Smith's
very tempting
first year in Kansas City, maybe not even then. So that sits there. The Chiefs' defense the last couple weeks has been much improved. 17, 7, and 14 points allowed in those games. Now, I say that to be honest, stat-wise. They've played the Giants, Green Bay without Aaron Rodgers, and the Raiders. So, it's not exactly like a powerhouse of offenses, they have been facing. This one is a whole different animal. So that defense could regress, or maybe it's finally, sort of stabilized and found a little bit of their form. I will say Chris Jones has sort of been back and playing really good football, which is always sort of a barometer on the Chiefs' defense. So I like that part of things. The offense I want to believe is back, but I'm not, completely sold yet because they ran up, some points there late. And the other thing that would talk me out of the Chiefs is still offensive line. They're still a little banged up across that offensive line. Yes, the Cowboys' pass rush has been a little bit hurt with injuries, but they still have found ways to get to the quarterback, at least in that game to Atlanta. Let's cross that Broncos game out overall. So I think numbers-wise, it's telling me take Chiefs. You don't get 2.5 at home. But my brain is telling me just stay away from this game. Watch this game. Enjoy this game. And if the Chiefs find their rhythm, we will have 6 to 7 more weeks where we can bet on the Chiefs and their burning teams. So probably a stay away here. But if that number stays around 2.5, by Sunday, I probably will have end up talking myself into it.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about Patrick Mahomes, all he needs is a field goal to cover your bet. It's really tempting, but as you mentioned, too much up and down so far this season for me to feel comfortable with it. I might just hope that it's a really good, entertaining game and sit back and watch.
Also, the meeting of the coaching minds, Andy Reid versus Mike McCarthy. There's at least a 15-point advantage sitting there. So I have to...
Just on coaching pedigree alone?
I have to factor that in as well. This next game, I'm really interested your take on it because I'm going to ride Seattle in this one. Arizona goes to Seattle. Seattle 1.5 point dogs in this one, so they're getting a 1.5. 47.5 over under, half point towards the Cardinals here in the first half. 23.5 over under. I think this Seahawks defense has sort of found its form, much like last year, where in the second It sort of figured out how it wanted to do and what it wanted to do. The question comes on offensive side of the ball. Russell Wilson came back last week. I did not think he looked very good. Throws looked interesting, let's just say. He did not look confident out there. Now, he'd been out about 6 weeks. He's, opening, on a road in Green Bay. That's not an easy place to go. He'll be back home. Much more comfortable situation here versus Arizona. The question would be, can the Seahawks find their offense, find a rhythm there? Hopkins has already been ruled out. They haven't said with Murray. They said, questionable. With Arizona having a bye next week, I'm assuming they probably sit him. If there's no Murray, I think this is a must-take. If there's a Murray, maybe you question it. But without Hopkins, I probably, still lean even if Murray played, especially with Arizona having the bye next week and the Rams losing. They can sort of throw this game away as well, much like they did the Carolina game. But I really think the Seahawks need this if they want to keep any hopes of their playoffs alive, much like San Francisco last week where they had to have that game. This seems like a must-have for Seattle, and sort of it'd be a nice win if it was for Arizona, but we don't have to have it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think that there's definitely a lot more need to win this game on Seattle's side of the ball. They're definitely looking at the Cardinals, from the bottom up. So they definitely have some catching up to do. And it starts here, when not only can you win a game, but you can also, eat away at that lead from the division leader. So it's really important for Seattle. I do think that they probably rushed Russell Wilson back a little sooner than they would have liked to. But again, a lot of that has to do with the fact that they were still within grasp of, making a playoff spot. It really depended on how, they were going to perform closing out this season. So I understand why they rushed him back. And I understand your point as far as Arizona keeping Murray out. But when I look at Cliff Kingsbury and I just look at the way he coaches, I feel like he's going to play Murray this week. I feel like if Murray's even close to, 75%, I think he's going to play Murray, and it's because he knows how much Seattle really needs this game. Now, I don't know if he's going to finish the game, whether that be because they're losing the game or it's just getting too dangerous for him. I don't know what that situation is going to play out, but I think Murray's going to find a way to play in this game. But even then, without Hopkins, probably his best target on offense, I think it probably takes away from them. I don't know what the situation for running back is for Arizona here. I know last week they were dealing with a little bit of an injury situation there. But with all that being said, I think that Russell at home, the 12th man there in Seattle, I think it's probably what he needs to settle himself down. He's probably really, not agitated, but he's in situations where he's been here before. He's playing all kinds of situations, but he's in a situation right now where he has to try and win as many games as possible to close out the season just to possibly get a chance to make the playoffs. So I don't know. I feel like Seattle is going to pull this one off, especially at home. And with the injuries for Arizona, I think it's going to be just a little too much for them to overcome. And I think Seattle pulls it off here, but not super confident. I got to be honest with you. I just don't know why, but I've got this weird gut feeling that somehow the outcome's going to be a lot different than people anticipate.
Why? Because Russell was flinging throws all over the random place last week and didn't look right?
Listen, Russell is one of those guys that I've always stated, even though he's in my division, is one of the guys that we go up against. And historically, it's been basically, one of those, either Seattle's winning or the Rams are winning. Then it's either Arizona and San Francisco. But we've had a lot of really good matchups with Seattle. And Russell Wilson's one of those guys that, as much as I want to hate him, I can't, because the guy's magic, especially when he's healthy and he's got, a good supporting squad, which they're kind of starting to get to rhythm. You mentioned Seattle's been playing better defensively. And if they can get the offense going, watch out for Seattle, man.
Yeah, that's my only question in this game. If, Russell can sort of find it. He was just, that offense was, it wasn't just him. That offense was, so bad last week versus Green Bay that, even if the defense steps up, I don't know if it can carry itself to win this game. But I think Russ will be better back home. Like I said, this is a must-win. So I like the Seattle game. Let's put that down as our fourth one. We got two more to go to. This one's an interesting one. Pittsburgh getting 6 points for the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers are the home team, technically speaking, but anyone who knows the Pittsburgh Steelers fan, know they will be flooded into that stadium. There will be no Chargers fans there. This is just a weird game. 46.5 over under, 4 first half, 23.5 over under in the first half. I don't know if you could trust the Chargers to cover a 6-point spread as bad as they've been playing. Reverse that over. We don't know if Big Ben is going to play or Mason Rudolph. The Steelers have half their defense is sitting on the injury report, probably going to be out. TJ Watt's going to be out. Joe Hayden's going to be out. Minka Fitzpatrick is on the COVID list. There's a question mark whether he will play. Lot of Steelers defensively that are probably not going to be out there. You probably have Mason Rudolph playing quarterback. We saw last week that even as bad as Ben Roethlisberger has been, he's still...
I told you. I told you.
He's still somehow a step up from Mason Rudolph, which I don't know what that says about Mason Rudolph's NFL career, but probably one that should not be in there. And then the joke that is Dwayne Haskins, I don't know if the story was officially real, but apparently he was warming up by checking his text messages on his cell phone for the first time he was active last week. So that guy just, that's just a clown show. He's just a clown show, but I don't know if I could talk myself into taking the Chargers -6 as bad as they've been. And as you know, they have defensive guys out. Bosa's out, and it's not like their defense was any good, even with their upper echelon players. So I'm curious your feel on this handicap, or is this just this was a cross off right off the start?
Off the top of my head, when I saw this matchup, I was trying to remember when the actual what week we start flexing games, because when I look at this, I'm like, I'm surprised they didn't flex the Chiefs and Cowboys onto that Sunday night game. And then with all the injuries, as you mentioned, for Pittsburgh, and then as poor as Los Angeles has been playing the Chargers over the last couple of weeks, but I can understand why they still have this game listed as the Sunday night game. It's because they're playing at SoFi Stadium, headquarters of the NFL down in Los Angeles. So that's probably one of the reasons. And then, you got the young star in Herbert, who they're obviously trying to market because definitely got a bright future for him. But as far as they're concerned over the last couple of weeks, offensively, they haven't been playing as well as we saw them play the first stretch of the season. Defensively, the Chargers can't do much. They haven't been able to stop basically anybody. And that bodes well for the offense of the Steelers, even with all the injuries that they have. But as you mentioned, with all the injuries on defense, which is probably their strongest, feature, to me, this reeks of potential bad football. And I don't want any action on it. I don't want to put my trust on the Chargers defense stopping the Pittsburgh offense. And I don't want to put my trust on the Pittsburgh offense actually putting up big points, especially if I don't know if Big Ben's playing.
Yeah. I think if Roethlisberger gets the go, I probably like that 6 because the Steelers as dogs have really been a good payout as dogs. But I don't think I can ride the Mason Rudolph train anymore after last week's disastrous toll that it took on my mind, body, and soul, which was already melting from the insides from being sick. So it was a double whammy of having that game on the TV while also sporting a 100-degree fever. It was a fever dream watching that game, and I was already having them. So, If Roethlisberger gets cleared, I might could talk myself into the 6, though I'd still be worried about the defensive guys out. And maybe the Chargers finding their form on offense, though, I have a lot of question marks about them. It's a good thing we didn't have our Tuesday review show, because I probably was going to go on them pretty hard. They don't use Eckler to run the ball, which I'm totally confused by. They have decided not to throw the ball to Mike Williams ever again. For some reason, though, he was the best receiver in the league for the first 4 weeks. I just don't know what's going on there. And we're talking about another team that, pulled one of these young assistant coaches, and I just don't know if they quite know how to deal with, an NFL football season. We talked about it with the Jets and Sala. I just don't know if Staley quite knows how to deal with these games. I think he knows how to deal being an offensive coordinator. I don't know if he knows how to deal being an NFL head coach. And that's why you get sort of this weird sort of Chargers season that starts out with a bang and then just is really dropped off here in the second half. So this is probably a cross-off game. And then we get the next one. Giants-Bucks, Monday Night Football. 10.5-point spread. You have some Brady versus the Giants things going on. 2-6 against the spread overall lifetime. Brady versus the Giants. I don't know what that means. That can be halfway fluky because, Tom Brady 2007 Patriots versus Tom Brady 2021 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm not sure factors that much with the 2007 New York Giants against the spread coverage. But that being said, last year these two teams played. A very bad Giants team played a very good Bucs team, and they covered a large spread in a close game they probably should have won. There is a good chance Saquon Barkley plays in this game. How much, I don't know. The Giants are coming off a bye. They should be as healthy as they've been in a long time. Bucks still probably going to be without Gronk and Brown. They have not looked right for a handful of weeks now, even coming off that bye. Secondary still in doubt. I kind of like this 10.5, but I always grab with trepidation when I want to go with this New York Giants team, in that it could be 45-15 and I'm watching bad football and asking myself why I would trust the Giants. I'm curious your view here.
Yeah, well, when I look at a spread that's this big, what is it, 10.5? I usually tend to want to take those points. When I'm getting that many points, it usually bodes well for me. And then, you start talking about the Giants, and I start getting a little bit excited. I'm like, oh, this is a team that I kind of had high hopes for. But then I'm like, how have they done for me so far this season? And the answer is not that good. So you pair that up, the fact that I've lost quite a few bets when I took the Giants, along with the fact that could this be a blowout? And that's usually the recipe for stay away. And that's probably what I'm going to do this week, is I'm going to stay away from this game.
Yeah, it's really a hard game to handicap because you look at numbers and you have to sort of toss them out. The Giants' offense is ranked 25 in total DVOA, but I don't think they've had their actual full unit of offensive players once this season, where Barkley, Galladay, Shepard are all healthy and on the field at the same time. The Tampa Bay offense is still one, but since they've lost all their weapons the last couple weeks, their offense has been really, really poor, along with Tom Brady. And then, the Tampa Bay defense, yes, the running defense has been really good, once again, with White, David, and Vita Vea. But Vita Vea got hurt last week. He's going to be out. That's going to affect their run defense a whole lot, as he is probably the main key who eats up all those blocks, who lets those two linebackers, roam free and make plays with their speed. So I think that's a little bit of a factor. And then you got that Tampa Bay secondary, which you watched Tyler Heineke carve up last week. And that's about the only time Tyler Heineke has carved up anybody so far this season. So I think that's still an issue. And I think this Giants offense could be able to do that. Now, that being said, I don't trust him. So I think this is a pass. And we go back up to that Carolina. We slide that in as our fifth mutual, and we live to fight another day, probably on that Monday when we're doing makeup betting, and we both talk ourselves into the New York Giants and Kenny Golladay as the first touchdown.
Yeah, that's probably what's going to end up happening because it's been happening to me for the last couple of weeks.
All right, so let's review our 5 mutuals. We have the Green Bay Packers -1.5, Miami Dolphins -3.5, New Orleans Saints +3, Carolina Panthers -3, and then we're going to ride with the Seattle Seahawks plus the 1.5. All right. Luckily, the Rams have a bye this week, so you can relax, go apple picking with the wife, and not have to worry about Matthew Stafford throwing random poor interceptions to people for a week. We'll get back on them next week during Thanksgiving, and you can get back into your tortured soul mode of Rams football. What do we got this week for picks?
I've got 4 picks, and before I mention my picks, you know the wife. Last week I had tickets to go to the UT basketball game. Okay, they were free tickets, and she says, "But I want to watch football." So yeah, I don't think we're going to go apple picking. I think we're going to sit here and try to make some money on these games.
I think you will be at the orchards making cider, and especially
it is the time of the year.
Especially since you've had to probably poorly watch that Pats game last night as your money was being thrown out the window, and Matt Ryan and Josh Rosen and Felipe Franks. I don't think I've seen a worse collection of 3 quarterbacks come in and throw interceptions in my life. But that's a fun threesome for interception quarterback throwing last night. But what's your first pick this week?
My first pick, I've got the New Orleans Saints +2 against the Philadelphia Eagles.
All right, New Orleans Saints +2. I also have the New Orleans Saints. It's up to +3 on here, so we'll give you 3 points on that one. I will take the New Orleans Saints +3. Also, we talked about it, Houston Texans +9.5 for me. What do you got for your second pick?
For my second pick, I am taking the Green Bay Packers -1.5 going up against division rival Minnesota Vikings.
All right, next up for me, Miami Dolphins -3.5 versus the New York Jets. I'm going to ride this Dolphins wave, see if they can sort of loosely get themselves back in the playoff hunt here.
For my third pick, I am taking the Carolina Panthers at -3 going up against the Washington football team.
All right, you're going to like this one. I am going with my Jacksonville Jaguars plus the 6.5 here. I think they got a shot here. I'd even look a little bit on this +230 money line. I think it sits there. Kyle Shanahan, you won't be stunned to learn this. Not very good as a favorite, especially as a road one. I know it's stunning, but not a great favorite coach. So I like the Jags plus 6.5.
For my final pick, I'm taking Cincinnati Bengals at -1. Was it -1.5?
It's -1.
-1. Okay. My phone wouldn't go back.
All right. Next up for me, Seattle Seahawks plus 1.5 over the Arizona Cardinals. Let's just hope Russell Wilson finds his mojo. We beat up on these Cardinals. Maybe the Cardinals trend finally starting to go down a little bit of regression back to the mean here. And was that all the picks for you?
That's it for me, just 4 this week.
All right. My last one, of course, the New York Giants plus 10.5 for me. We're just going to ride the trend that they cover versus Tom Brady and then be sadly disappointed when this is a 20-point game and you wonder why you bet on the Giants in the first place. So plus 10.5 for me. All right, that's our show. Be sure to like and subscribe. We're going to try to get back on track next week with our full slate of shows on schedule as we both are healing up and should be a little bit more normal and regulated as we go. So we should be back on track next week. We'll definitely have a Tuesday recap show. We'll maybe have a Thanksgiving show or just have our normal Friday show. We haven't worked that quite out yet, but we'll see where we go from there. But back on schedule next week. Our college football show just dropped, so be sure to get all on the college picks with Dynamite David and his hot picks for the week. See if he gets back on track. I'm feeling like it'll be a good week in the college football. I'm feeling like it'll be a good week in the NFL. So be sure to like and subscribe. That's our show, and we're out.